Guys, I had every intention of doing a buy low show this afternoon, but then as the news started to pile up, it became exceptionally clear to me that we need to do a show on good news. This is just a good news show. It's not going to be that long, 15, 20 minutes, kind of a quick hitter. But good news is literally pouring down on our heads on this Monday on the fantasy basketball side. And it's not like, okay, yeah, obviously, if you comb through every little bit, you're going to find something that's not perfect. But as injury news days go, this is the best one I can remember in the last half decade. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Again, this is a good news hour. It's not the hour. It's a good, we need a better name for it. I'm Dan Bespris at Dan Bespris on Twitter, DanBesbris. We still have to get to all sorts of stuff over on social, including bad schedule analysis, good schedule analysis, injury replacement guys, non-injury replacement guys. So follow over there. I'm Old Man Squad on the brand new Blue Sky Old Man Squad Fantasy on Instagram. And I hope I'll see you guys over at those locations. And this show, as all shows here on Old Man Squad, are brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. Let me tell you a little bit more about Bet Online. They're the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. They've got the earliest odds. They've got live in-game betting. They've got the ability to watch the games as they're happening. And they've got odds on football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, MMA. So head to Bet Online today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Again, the game starts here at Bet Online. Where to begin? Let's just work through these things one by one. By the way, please hit that like button, subscribe, drop that 5-star review. This was the first one. Chronologically, this was the first one I saw this morning when I got home from taking one kid off to like a little camp run by after-school people, and then the other one is still healing up from his hernia surgery a week ago. This is wild times over here in the Vespers household. Kristaps Porzingis. This tweet is a Shams Charania tweet. He writes, and I quote, Boston Celtics center Kristaps Porzingis plans to make his season debut tonight against the Los Angeles Clippers. Sources tell ESPN Porzingis returns 5 months after undergoing foot surgery. So this one's a little bit of a good news, bad news situation, but the good news so far outweighs the bad that it's not even really fair to call it a good news, bad news as much as it is a tempered good news. Obviously, the good news is Porzingis is back. He was the number 13 player in all of 9 category leagues last year, and he only missed a little over a month of basketball, which is way better than most of us thought when this season started. You know, I thought they said he was going to be out till Christmas, and then they were like, oh, he's running a little bit ahead of schedule. I was like, yeah, sure, this is Porzingis. And he was. Go figure. The tempered part is that this is a dude who hasn't played basketball since the middle of the playoffs last year. This is, again, is a 5-month rehab time on this surgery. So they're not going to exactly shove him into 30 minutes a ball game, which is what he played last year. So you're going to see some 15, some 16, some 17, some 18s, and it's going to be a slow crawl up to those full starters minutes. So if you're thinking about, you know, head-to-head, roto, all that kind of stuff, there's a little bit of a grain of salt that has to go into all of this. For one, this is a great week for Porzingis to make his return because Boston doesn't, what are they? They play tonight and then they're off. They don't play again until the 29th. That's Friday. So he can play tonight against the Clippers, then he gets 3 days off to rest. They do have a 5-7 stretch coming up before we hit the NBA Cup break in the action. And there's almost no chance Porzingis plays in 5 of those games. There's almost no chance he plays in 4. Odds are he plays in 3. My guess would be probably the Miami game on the first half and then wait it out till Memphis at the end. So they, you know, most days off basically. And while this ramp up is going, there's that long break blended in there. Week 8 is nothing in the NBA. There are no games. Week 9 is a half week. So, yeah, I mean, he's got some time to kind of ease his way back in, but we're probably not going to see a full-bore Kristaps Porzingis until Christmas. Kristaps Christmas Porzingis? I don't know. I've lost the thread. But But overall, it's still good news because once he's at like 20 to 22 minutes a game, he's good enough fantasy-wise to get him into your lineups. Would I play him tonight? Probably not. I can't imagine they're going to go more than about 18 minutes, which, I mean, honestly, 18 minutes, he might actually do enough. But I wouldn't bank on it. You get that adrenaline game. That's the only reason I might think about it, but they're going to keep the minutes in check. Overall, though, this is fantastic news. I thought we wouldn't see him until December at the absolute earliest. He's back a week before December, and not only that, like, I thought he was going to be coming back late December, maybe even turn of the year, and he's a month ahead of that. So great news on the Porzingis front. As far as what does it mean for other fantasy players, because obviously as he ramps up, that's good for him. It's not so great for Wave's hands. It's particularly bad for Al Horford, which is the real pisser in all of this. This is the bad news part. Al Horford was just cruising along so far this year, just happily being an old man, putting up delightful old man numbers. He was number 69. Nice. In fantasy coming into tonight. And he might miss this one due to rest. I think he's got a cold. So there's like a couple things going on. But Horford is at 2.4 3-pointers, a steal, a block. He's basically at 50% from the field. He hasn't missed a free throw yet so far this year. He was doing all the things that we wanted out of him to make him a 6th round value so far this season. And that's just not going to hold. He's not going to play 28 minutes a ball game when Porzingis is around. And they might start together at some point. What I like, though, at least thinking about the Horford front, is sure he's going to likely miss this one. So kind of a tough start to the week for Al Horford. But like that Chicago game with Porzingis is going to play like 15, 16 minutes. Those will probably come from Luke Cornett in the short term. Cornett's probably going to go to a 0. Xavier Tillman's going to go to a 0 if he wasn't already. Nimias Keita is going to go to a 0. Horford's not going to be the first guy to lose out on this. He will be the later guy to lose out because once Porzingis is at full tilt, then they're not going to need Horford to be the center. Whereas right now, Porzingis, if he starts, he starts. If he comes off the bench, I don't really care. If Horford's only playing 27 minutes a ball game, there's plenty of backup centermen. Like they could do an easy split right now, and Big Al's not going to be impacted maybe until after the NBA Cup or maybe like one of those 2 games before it. But they've got back-to-backs. They've got a pair of back-to-backs leading into the NBA Cup. So Horford's going to play one of those, and Porzingis will play the other. So you still got a perfectly good opportunity. So I'm not doing anything with Big Al until at least December 19th. That's when the teams come back from the NBA Cup, like basically a week and a half long break from games that count for the real schedule and for fantasy purposes. And then the Celtics don't have another back-to-back until all the way out at January 1st and 2nd and 3rd of January. And then you got, okay, I can drop Al Horford into this. But the problem is that over that stretch leading up to it, Porzingis gets ramped up into the mid-20s. That's when Horford starts to really take his hit. And then you'll see everyone else take a small hit. With each progressive bump in Porzingis playing time, everybody else is just going to do a little bit less. Good news number 2 of the day. DeJounte Murray. As Chris Haynes writes, we'll do the quote here from Chris Haynes on Twitter. Sources, New Orleans Pelicans star DeJounte Murray, who fractured his left hand on opening night, intends to make his return Wednesday against the Toronto Raptors. Which, by the way, this goes hand in hand with another one, and there wasn't a loud tweet about it, so I can't put it up on your screen. But CJ McCollum is expected back tonight for the New Orleans Pelicans. For Murray, I would start him immediately on Wednesday. Fractured hand, he'll play mid to high 20s in minutes right out of the chute because he's been able to keep his conditioning up throughout his recovery process. Yeah, there might be some rust that has to get shaken off, so that's a thing. But it's his non-shooting hand, so maybe it's more like ball handling rust. But in any event, I don't think there's much in the way of ramp up there. McCollum, I mean, that one, I think you got to be a little bit more cautious. He's coming back from an injury to his core. And he only played 4 games to start the year and then missed the last like 3.5, 4 weeks. So they might bring him along just a little bit more slowly. But either way, this is good news. Ultimately, I'd probably start them both their first game back because what's 4 weeks? McCollum probably gets into the mid to high 20s. And frankly, they're going to need him to just jack up shots with the way lineups they've been running out. I would be very, very cautious before starting someone like a Brandon Boston tonight. in that game. And in fact, I've taken him off of my burger board. I don't have the faith to start these guys as dudes come back for the Pelicans. So I don't think I'm going Brandon Boston. With McCollum back, you probably go McCollum, Trey Murphy, and Brandon Ingram, and then DeJounte you just sort of add to the mix on Wednesday. But I'm done with Pelicans streamers with pretty much anybody coming back. Next one, let's bounce over to one that doesn't have a picture. Okay, they can't all be pretty. This one is out of Charlotte. This is from the Hornets public relations account on Twitter, at Hornets PR. Official, : at Hornets have assigned Nick Richard and Mark Williams. It's actually an S at the end, Nick Richards, and Mark Williams to the at Greensboro Swarm for a rehab assignment. They will practice with the Swarm today in Charlotte. That's freaking awesome news. But again, there's sort of a little bit of two things going on. First, Nick Richards was around top 100 value as a starter so far this year, mostly because he was going buck wild in blocks. He was averaging 2.4 blocks per game, a number that I think we all knew was not going to actually last long term in his 5 games before he went down. We don't know how long Richards and Mark Williams are going to be practicing with the Greensboro Swarm before they come back. And frankly, it's been so GD long since Mark Williams actually took a basketball court that we don't even really know what this timeshare is going to look like. Mark Williams was seemingly the starter coming into this season before he went down during the preseason, during training camp, I think, with that strained tendon. And last year, Mark Williams was the starter before he went down with his back stuff. But do the Hornets now rethink whether or not his body can even take normal NBA minutes? I kind of think that the only logical move here, and it's going to be annoying because you're going to end up having to roster Mark Williams, is to roster Mark Williams. He was number 59 in 9 category leagues last year in just 26 and a half minutes per game on averages of 13 points, 10 rebounds, 0.8 steals, 1.1 blocks, 65% medium volume from the field, and 72% at the free throw line. So not a back-breaking, pun intended, number for Mark Williams at the foul line. We don't need him to get up to 30 minutes. Coming into the season, if you were doing your draft somewhat early and Mark Williams seemed healthy, I think the hope was that he was going to get up around 30 minutes and be just sort of like a traditional starter, played 28, 29, 30, 31, something like that. And then the thought there was just add another 10% on to basically what he had done last year, and that would have pushed him inside the top 50. But now I think we have to treat Mark Williams as somebody who maybe doesn't simply have the body, or at least not right now, to weather a 28, 29-minute role and just expect him to be 24 or 25. If Mark Williams is playing 25 minutes, he probably sits somewhere around top 80, top 90. If Nick Richards is playing 25 minutes, he's likely outside the top 100. And so to ask a question that many of you posed on social media when this news broke, do I roster Mark Williams or do I roster Nick Richards? The answer, I think, has to be Mark Williams. And it's not because of I get it. You want Richards because he's probably going to be healthier the rest of the way. But it's just a capped upside. Because if Richards is not the full-time starter, he's not going to put enough stats up on the board to be a full season fantasy guy. On days when Mark Williams is actually in the lineup, when he's out, I guess, we can rethink that a little bit, especially now with Grant Williams down and Moussa Diabate, the only other center on the books. But when all of these guys are healthy, and let's assume that they get back at some point, and Mark Williams will probably be the starter, getting 24, 25, 26 minutes if he can handle it, that pushes him into that 75 range or better. And that's the guy that you'd ultimately want to roster. Again, even if it ends up being extraordinarily annoying to do so. Injury news number 4. Are we on 4 now? This one's another Shams tweet. At Shams Charania, Suns, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal, this is a quote, plan to return to the lineup against the Los Angeles Lakers in Tuesday's NBA Cup game in Phoenix. Sources tell ESPN, because everybody does return against the Lakers. So this should have been this telegraphed a little bit, because we all should have potentially seen this coming. This is wonderful news. Glorious news in every respect, because the guys picking up for these dudes in Phoenix were bad. They were bad. I mean, it was bad. I know I'm having trouble with my verbiage so far today, but if you look at the Suns over the last week, Yusuf Nurkic had one very good ball game, and then I think he sat out the other one. Tyus Jones looked pretty good, and Devin Booker looked pretty good, and then everybody else was straight, hot, steaming garbage. Royce O'Neal averaged 9.5 and 5.5 with his field goal percent coming back down to earth. Ryan Dunn, the Rook, played, 22 minutes a game and averaged 6 and 4. Oso Iguodaro got one start mixed in there, and that was, I guess, somewhat okay, but otherwise he was bad. And Josh Okogie had the fourth best rank on the team at 9 points, 4.5 boards, and a steal. It was bad. Nobody filled in for either of those guys. Grayson Allen had the best shot to do it, but he went high-volume free throw tank fest. And so now for the Suns, the reason that, this is all good news, because you slot in two start immediately fantasy guys, and no one lost value that was a starter anyway. Okay, that's not fair. Tyus Jones and Devin Booker will each do a little bit less with those guys back, but they're both startable anyway. What I mean to say is, no one moves across the cut line in this Phoenix situation. Nobody really moved above it when they went out, so no one's really going to move below it when they come back. I always think about that old Saturday Night Live Celebrity Jeopardy skit where it was Daryl Hammond as Sean Connery. He wagered below, and he answered me. Below me? Anyway, nobody moved below me the cut line in this one. Those skits were so good. I don't get it. Will Ferrell as Alex Trebek. When you say, I bet you do, Trebek. So that's great news, unless you're a Lakers fan. Otherwise, then it's not as great news. And we continue. The good news rolls on because according to Chris B. Haynes, we're back to Chris again. Sources, Memphis Grizzlies star Ja Morant will make his return tonight against the Portland Trail Blazers after missing the past 8 ball games with a hip injury. Now, Ja Morant is a different kind of monster for fantasy because he's more of a points league type of player. He'll be good enough in 9-cat to get it done, but he excels in a handful of categories and is also extraordinarily bad in others. He is sort of what you'd call the punt type player or the points league type player because turnovers tend to be bad and field goal and free throw tends to be kind of bad, although free throw is actually pretty good so far this year. And threes are not that good, but he's going to score like a son of a gun. He's going to rebound and he's going to pass. He's going to get some great assists. He's going to rack up counting stats in those 3 categories. And so he'll probably end up, I don't know. I mean, don't look at Ja this year or last year. Look 2 seasons back. 2022, 2023, Ja was number 92 on averages of 26, 6, and 8, but not much else. High volume, bad free throw, bad turnover, low field goal. Defensive stats were kind of meh. 3-pointers were not very good. And so that landed him at 92. But, of course, if you're punting turnovers, he jumps way up the board. If you're punting free throws, he jumps way up the board. He's a punt guy or a points league guy. But, whatever you classify him as for fantasy, he's a good player for the Grizzlies to have back. But there is this sort of opposite side of this thing because it sounds like Marcus Smart is also getting close, and that brings 2 point guard eligible guys back for a Grizzlies team that was leaning pretty heavily on Scottie Pippen Jr., who now I think you can take, and Santi Aldama. I think both of those guys can likely come off the streamer board. I don't think they're worth rostering anymore. You can give it a day if you want to. I personally just don't think you need to. Maybe I'm being a butt. But I don't care. That's just the way I feel. So I think those streamers are likely done in Memphis. And then finally, this one's, a little bit of a lower profile deal. Malik Monk. Sounds like this again is Chris B. Haynes tweets. Sources, Sacramento Kings guard Malik Monk will go through pregame warmups with the intention of making his return tonight against the Oklahoma City Thunder after missing the past 7 games. This is one that's going to be a bigger deal for reality than it is for fantasy because Monk is going to always hover in that filler territory, somewhere between 100 and 150. So far this year, I think he's at like 130 something. Yeah, 138. is the number on Monk on Basketball Monster. 12.5 points, 3 assists, 3 boards, a steal, decent free throw number. Like, he's not knocking the doors in or whatever. He's not bad. He's not really hurting your team in many meaningful ways, but he's also not really helping almost anywhere. Malik Monk gets good when De'Aaron Fox has to miss a ball game, when there's an opportunity to do a little bit more shooting and passing, but Fox is in, and so Monk is just going to kind of spell him and then be a bench scorer and so forth. There was a time where Monk could be more of like a punt field goal target, but he doesn't even move inside the top 100 if you're punting field goals this year. And some of that is probably because DeMar DeRozan came in, and so there just isn't as much for Monk to do. I think he's still in the 130s, believe it or not, if you're punting field goal, because so many guys that are that far down the board move up together. You're like, but Dan, he's a negative in that category. Why doesn't punting move him up the board? Because everybody around him also sucks at that category. So I don't really care that much about the Malik Monk news. This, again, will be better news for the Kings, and it also makes Kevin Huerter, who already was cooked because DeMar and Sabonis came back over the weekend, but now Huerter is like triple cooked. And then this was the tweet that I put out as all of this news kept rolling in. Today we learned Kristaps Porzingis is back tonight. DeJounte Murray is back Wednesday. Durant and Beal are back Tuesday. Morant is back tonight. McCollum is back tonight. I hadn't even seen the Malik Monk news, but he's back probably tonight. And we got those G League assignments for the Charlotte Hornets. This was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces of excellent injury news that all dropped on the same day. Very few guys that weren't already out got listed as out. And actually, not that it matters all that much, but Terry Rozier sounds like he might be back for the Miami Heat for this ball game. The only name I think that's hanging in the balance right now that you were like, oh, come on, can't we get through this, is Cat. Miles Turner, too. Miles Turner also is a coin flip going into the ball games tonight. But everybody else, it's like, frickin' welcome back. Hi, everybody. Hi, Dr. Nick. Even Jackson Hayes is back. What could go wrong? He said, knowing something will go wrong. There are a few guys that were already out that continue to be out, like Cade Cunningham is going to miss this ball game tonight. Not everybody in the NBA is all back at the same time. So, yes, we do still have some kind of injury board remaining. But it's dramatically shrunk from what it was even just a day ago. Very cool news today. Great to finally be kind of coming out of this thing. Guys are coming back. This is the long ebb and flow of the NBA season. Sometimes you have weeks where everything goes wrong, and sometimes you have weeks where guys come back. And so, you know, I try my best as a show host and a fantasy analyst and a content creator, or whatever you want to call it at this point, to not so much look at the bright side of stuff, because there are a lot of injuries so far this year. There's no sugarcoating that. The NBA has been decimated by them so far this season. But our job is to find the values that get unearthed by guys going down. If we're looking at just the names on the screen right now from the tweet I sent out, like DeJounte Murray and CJ McCollum being out has unearthed for a week Jordan Hawkins and then Brandon Boston for a couple of weeks. And Ja Morant being down has really given Scottie Pippen Jr. a nice window to succeed. There's usually a very thin, it's a big dark cloud, but there's usually some little thin silver lining on this stuff. And our job is to get all those silver linings and amass them on a fantasy team. So that way, when half your team is out, you can stay afloat. But I'll tell you what, it's damn nice to be able to do a show like this one to just point out that sometimes the players come back at a faster clip than they go down. Knock on wood. Let's make it through the games tonight without losing anybody else. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. This was the Good News Hour here on a Monday afternoon. Subscribe, like, rate, and review. Follow on Twitter at Dan Bestperson. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow with a Monday recap and a mailbag with my good buddy Adam King. That'll be what's coming up on Tuesday. Wednesday, we have a little hot and cold. Yes, senor, no. Are we doing Katy Perry? Oh, God. Get out of here, Dan. Run!